Okay, it is hot in Texas. Every time I get into the news and start checking things out, it looks like someone's having issues on the trail, whether it's heat-related injuries or even worse, fatalities. So it made me wonder just how safe is hiking. So let's jump in. Okay, so annually we run just under 58 million active hikers here in the U.S., and they're taking advantage of about 88,000 miles of trails. Out of those, they break out where just under 60% are male, just over 40% are female. And in the National Park Service, we average right at about 4 deaths per 100,000 hikers. So that's pretty low. Now let's dive in and actually look and see what makes up those 4 deaths per. Okay, so right at 50% of those are what they classify as an unintentional fatality. So this is going to be things like drowning, it's going to be things like falls, which by the way, those combined are the 2 largest categories that they've got. Then you've got things like on-property car accidents, you've got things like lightning strikes, avalanches, things like that. So hands down, the biggest bulk of them are going to be the falls and the drownings. Oddly enough, the falls, for the fatalities, the men are 72% of those. And we're probably not making the wisest decisions while we're out on the trail. For the non-fatal ones, there's typically ladies that are non-fatal incidents, the bulk of which are involving their ankles. So it's trip, fall, turned ankle, that type of thing. And then you have another category which makes up the other 50%, which these are more, it's a combination of medical conditions and then the intentional fatalities, which are more the people going to unalive themselves, which is not a huge number in the whole scheme of things. That piece, whether it is self-inflicted, those are about 95% of the time, and then the other 5% of the time for an intentional, it's something a little more nefarious. On the component that is the medical condition, the biggest driver for that is cardiac-related issues, some of which is exacerbated by heat issues, but those are predominantly the biggest drivers on the at least for the male side, for those over 34 years of age. So when we step out beyond the National Park Service and go through and start looking at some of the same stats, from the fatality perspective, about 50% of those nationally are fall related. Another 15% make up drowning. So again, those are the 2 biggest drivers for all of it, but the balance is a little bit different from national parks to nationally, where before the National Park Services, the drownings were a little bit higher than the falls, but now they're kind of flip-flopped now at this point, and pretty sizably so. So coming in at 10%, we got heat-related illnesses, 6% lightning, 3% avalanches, and so in those heat-related numbers, that's also where some of that cardiac issues come in. Noticing in there, though, is what you don't see. You don't see animal encounters, and that's what more often than not people worry about while they're on the trail. Those numbers are even smaller. Okay, on the animal encounter side of the world, these are not just hiking specific stats. This is for everyone that's enjoying the outdoors. So black bear attacks, we only average 1 fatality per year. So it's really low. What else do we worry about? We worry about venomous snakes. We have anywhere from 7,000 to 8,000 venomous bites per year. We only average 4 to 5 fatalities. And that's because we have the ability to go to the hospital and have anti-venom treatments. If you're worried about big cats, just take a laser pointer and a big ball of yarn, you're fine. No, actually, I'm just kidding. Over the last 100 years, I've only been 24 documented cat attack fatalities. So if you're an arachnophobe and you're worried about the creepy crawlies, you're worried about the black widow and brown recluses, we only average annually about 6 fatalities with those. It's more, and typically those are people that are sort of already compromised. They're either really young and sick, or they're really old and sick, and it just sort of adds onto the equation. Okay, for the segment that is a little more nefarious, I tried to go through and look at the AT traffic as a good example. I figured that'd be a good sort of microcosm. If we take our national murder rate and we actually applied that across the total number of folks who attempt the AT each year, that would shake out to be about 220 fatalities per year. It would be almost 10,000 total if we went all the way back to 1974 when we first started counting. However, in the whole scheme of things, in the history of Appalachian Trail, there have only been 10 documented murders. So that number is significantly lower than what our national average would be. It does not mean that you don't have things like assaults and essays that go on out there. Those things do happen. They do happen at a rate, however, that are lower than what our national rates are for those same statistics. Of all search and rescue operations that go on in the National Park Service, 42% of those are day hikers. Backpackers are a little more accustomed to being out there, so they fare a little bit better. They are actually 4 times higher than the next highest classification, which I believe is searches for water-related incidents, whether you've come out of a boat or flipped over your kayak, that type of thing, or drownings. Thousands of people every year get lost. The overwhelming majority are found. I think the National Park Service right now is working just under 3 dozen total cold case missing persons. So over the years, with assuming that thousands of people get lost and they're only working 3 dozen, that's a really low number. Okay, so from a search and rescue perspective, I get asked the question all the time: is SAR free? Right, so if they go out boots on the ground, and you're not always charged for this, sometimes you are, sometimes you're not. It kind of depends on the location and the circumstance. If you are billed for it, we average in the National Park Service for just boots on the ground about $1,200 for the cost. If you pull out the helicopter, now you're looking more like $12,000 for the cost. Okay, so what can we do to help prevent us from being one of these statistics? Okay, so I like to think of these in 4 categories, and the first one, in my opinion, is probably the most important one, and that's knowing your limits. This is anything from being able to realistically estimate what your experience level is, your fitness level, but then also being accustomed to how tolerant am I for these environments, this elevation level, just not overestimating what your capabilities are. This also includes having the proper gear and the proper amount of food and proper hydration, just being realistic with yourself about what you're gonna need to go into this environment. And then I do lump in here, because it doesn't fit really nicely into any of the others, is there is an element of safety in numbers. So obviously we are far less susceptible to suffering an injury and it becoming life-threatening if there's more than just ourselves out on the trail. Second category is planning your hikes. Part of it's picking the right location so that we're not overstepping what our capabilities are. And then there's also that following step of leaving a clear trip plan with someone back at home who's going to be responsible looking for us, and then having our own little emergency plan while we're out there, so that if something happens, we know what we're going to do. It also includes having a clear way to communicate back. And our cell phones are just they're a wonderful resource, but they're not always in every situation as dependable as what we would like for them to be. We need to also know what the at least forecasted weather is, but not count on that being 100% concrete, and having enough stuff to keep us prepared to endure whatever is out there from a weather perspective. But it also involves being sure to check for recent alerts and notifications that are covering the areas that we're going into. Third category is dovetailing in off of one of the items from earlier, and that's what to bring. We should always go out on the trail with the typical 10 essentials of hiking. If you don't know what those are, plenty of resources out there to check those out. We're not going to rehash those now, but it's definitely taking enough food, but more so water into the environment. Here in Texas right now, it's wickedly hot. Kind of a good measure would be 1 liter per mile that we're going out hiking. We're going to plow through water. If we are in a circumstance where we are have the opportunity to refill, maybe we don't have to carry that much, but we've got the resources to go through and filter it, that's perfectly fine too. We should be able to make that water safe to drink. Additional stuff that we want to have the proper shoes when we're going out, footwear, stuff like that, bug spray, good socks, all the stuff that's normally stuff that we would expect. But then also, even if you're out for a day hike, you need to take enough stuff with you that if you have to spend the night, that you're actually able to do that. Don't assume that just because we plan for it to be a day hike that it's going to stay that way. The last category is hiking smart. This is an opportunity for me to go try to climb up on this outcropping to get just the perfect photo, so I can come back and post it on my Facebook page or Instagram or Snapagram or MySpace or whatever the heck the kids are using these days. Can't keep it straight in my head most of the time. We'll also want to go through and check with park rangers before we set off, and just make sure we're aware of any hazards that may be out there going on or considerations that we need to keep up with. We also, speaking of keeping up with stuff, we need to keep up with our time and our mileage so that we've got a clear estimate as to how long it's taking me to get into the area, so that I have a good estimate of how long it's going to take me to get back out of the area. Be sure to take plenty of breaks. This isn't a foot race. I kind of think most hikers sort of fall into one of two categories. I'm either trying to get from A to B as quickly as possible. That's not me. I'm more of a mosier or an ambler. So take plenty of breaks. And while you're doing that, be sure to grab a snack and take an opportunity to get plenty of water and get work on your hydration while you're taking those breaks, and work on it while you're on the trail too. Take your time, watch your step. Like I said earlier, this is not a foot race. Enjoy the nature, enjoy it while you're out there. If you do have to go up and down steep inclines and descents, or you have to go across water, definitely take time to be extra safe in those moments. The last one, this is sort of a pet peeve for me. You see it all the time. It's almost every week you can see a story out there. Be respectful of wildlife. Don't try to take a selfie with the fluffy cows. Getting too close to these animals is dangerous, not only for you, but also for the animal. So be respectful. Don't do anything foolish. Okay, guys, thanks for sticking with me through this one. It's, like I said, it just kind of popped out in my head. I always feel safe when I'm on the trail, but also at the same time, every time I'm looking at the news lately, I keep seeing an incidence of something. And so I thought we'd throw something together with you guys just so you can know just how infrequent some of this stuff is, so you have a realistic expectation of what's out there. And as always, if you're out there right now, just remember, as always, left foot, right foot, repeat. We'll see you soon.